It is finally October, the best month of the year. And of course, we're starting our horror marathon, beginning with Jason versus Freddy. And I'm not talking about the 2003 film, I'm talking about their first films in their franchises, right? We have the 1980 Friday the 13th versus the 1984 Nightmare on Elm Street. Which is the better film? Before we begin, I have to admit, I've never watched any of either Jason or Freddy's, movies. Considering that I am a horror fan, I love horror, as you guys can tell. I haven't watched any of their movies, so I'm pretty disappointed in myself. But that's why we're doing this in our horror marathon for 2024. Now, beginning with Friday the 13th, let's begin with the cast. Okay, you have Kevin Bacon. He was probably one of the more familiar actors. You know, I've seen him in a couple other movies. So, Kevin Bacon, he plays a guy named Jack. You got Adrienne King, who plays Alice. And then you got Betsy Palmer, who plays Pamela Voorhees, Jason's mother. Now, I do want to say that I didn't feel that this movie here had a strong lead role, right? It felt like it was just a group of teenagers or young adults who are trying to, repair this cabin, and no one really stuck out except for, the first character who's hitchhiking and stuff, trying to get to the lake, but she dies right off the bat. So then after that, it didn't really feel like anyone was the lead role, right? You have, of course, Kevin Bacon, who plays Jack. I thought he might be the lead role, or his girlfriend might be the lead role, but they die as well. And it wasn't until the end that you find out that Adrienne King, or Alice, is playing the lead role. So I didn't really feel like there was a lead role throughout the film. Now, memorable scenes. I felt like there weren't many memorable scenes in this film. The only one that really stuck out was the scene where Jason jumps out of the water when Alice is dreaming, or was she dreaming? That was basically the only real memorable scene throughout the film. Also, you don't really get much of the killings. You don't see much of the killings throughout the film. It was always like one person would drift off, and the other people will find them dead. When they found when they would go look for them, they would already be dead, and you just knew there was a killer. And on top of that, I didn't really like the effects in the film. For example, when Kevin Bacon's character gets killed, right? He gets stabbed through the neck underneath the bed. You could kind of tell that, the body was not part of the head. This is 1980, so yes, I'm going to cut him some slack, because obviously during that time, effects weren't a big thing in horror films or any films at all. Now, my biggest critique about this film is that we don't get to see Jason at all throughout the film, except for when he comes out of the lake. But we don't see him with the mask or the machete. And I kind of realized that this film is just the setup for this franchise. You later find out that it's Jason's mother who's going around killing people because of what they done to Jason, right? And she did a good job. She did a very good job of killing most of these people one by one. Again, these kids or these teenagers weren't the smartest. I feel like they were just there just to mess around. And they found out how dangerous Crystal Lake was. I feel like the ending was okay. It was somewhat underwhelming, but you do get why Jason is killing, right? You understand his backstory, and you also understand why he uses the machete. The machete is important, right, to Jason's character. In this film, at the very ending of this film, Alice is fighting Jason's mother. She's trying to fight her off, and she ends up decapitating her with the machete. So that machete is, I'm assuming that machete is the one he uses to kill from now on, right? So you do get that. So the ending was okay, I would say. Now, is Friday the 13th, was it scary? Is Jason scary? I felt, well, one, Jason never showed his face throughout this film. So was the mother scary? Was this whole scenario scary? I felt like if you were in it, it'd be scary, but I don't know. I didn't find this film to be that scary, to be honest. Especially when you found out that it was her mother and who it was. I mean, me, granted, I'm a guy, a strong, muscular man. I think I could easily fend off Jason's mother, and the way they were fighting at the end, it was kind of like just knock her out. You don't have to continue to run. You could just knock her out, end it, and then start running, right? But I didn't feel that fear from this film. But overall, I felt like this movie was a good film. Now jumping on to Nightmare on Elm Street, the cast, you got Johnny Depp, one of my favorite characters or actors. I was excited to see him in this film. He plays Glenn Lance. You got Heather Langenkamp. I'm sorry if I butchered your name. Plays Nancy Thompson. These are the two main characters. Nancy plays a great lead role in this film. I felt like she did a great job fighting Freddy. Good acting. I really loved Nancy, or I loved Heather playing Nancy. Great role, great cast. And so I felt like this cast here was a bit stronger than Friday the 13th. Memorable scenes. This movie has a lot of memorable scenes, right? The intro was strong. Freddy came out strong in the beginning of the film. It begins with Tina's nightmare, right? And you see how Freddy Krueger is getting ready. He's getting his glove or he's actually building his glove, which is actually pretty cool to watch. Great intro, pretty scary. Some other memorable scenes. The ceiling stretching, right? The ceiling stretching scene. I feel like most of these scenes that I'm about to talk about, I feel like if you watch this movie as a kid, you would be terrified, right? Friday the 13th, I'd be scared of Friday the 13th as well, but Nightmare on Elm Street would be my nightmare for the next month or so if I watched this as a kid. Thank God I didn't. Again, ceiling stretching, when Freddy is looking over Nancy in her bed and the ceiling is stretching. I felt like that was pretty cool. As a kid, that would scare me. You got the long arm Freddy. He's walking down the alleyway with the long arms. That was crazy. I like that. Face sliding off of Freddy when she's trying to push him away. I mean, all of these, man, they're gruesome. They're just strange. They're freaky. You got Floating Tina, when I was watching that as an adult, I felt scared because it reminded me of The Exorcist. Exorcist is my worst nightmare. Why? Because imagine being Rod, right, the boyfriend, and watching Tina getting hurt and attacked by an invisible thing, and then she starts floating, getting cut up, and on the wall. There's nothing you can do. What do you do at that point? Nothing. You could just watch this person or your loved one get attacked and get killed by nothing, right? And that's why it reminds me of The Exorcist. The Exorcist is the same way, and that's why I felt like it still scares me as an adult watching this, because imagine watching a loved one like that, you know what I'm saying? So, and at the end, you got the car scene, right? You think that Freddy has been dealt with. He's not going to come anymore. And next thing you know, you realize at the very end that Freddy is the car that they drive off in. And you see the mom waving at the very end, and she gets yanked through the door window by Freddy. So that was crazy. Again, lots of memorable scenes in this film. Absolutely love them. Now, the ending was also interesting. It was entertaining. To me, it felt like Home Alone, right? The way she was setting all the traps for Freddy, and she was ready to take him down. I mean, again, Nancy, I love the way she just was fighting Freddy. She was being smart, outsmarting him. It did feel like Home Alone, especially when Freddy is chasing her out the door and the sledgehammer hits him in the stomach. I mean, that was pretty funny. And then the explosive light bulbs and all this stuff. I thought it was pretty funny. And the ending was great because you knew that it was going to continue, right? Freddy was the car, the mother gets yanked, and so it's kind of like telling you, oh, there's more coming. So ending was great. Now, was this film scary? Is Freddy Krueger's scary? I think he is. I thought that this movie was scary. The concept that this guy, Freddy Krueger, haunts you in your dreams. is terrifying because it doesn't matter where you go. You can pack your bags and go to Mexico. Guess what? You still got to sleep, buddy. So he's going to haunt your dreams for the rest until you either deal with him or you die, right? So I felt like the premise of this was scary. Again, the Tina scene floating, that terrified me because it reminded me of The Exorcist. And overall, I feel like the movie was creative. I've had more fun watching this film than I did Friday the 13th. And it had good effects. I mean, the Tina scene, again, how did they manage to film that? How did they film her floating? Was she strapped up? I felt like it was interesting. It was a great scene. Effects were great. So yeah, that adds on to the scare, right? So I felt like this movie was scarier than Friday the 13th. Now, before I end this video, I did want to mention something. Glenn had one job, and it was to stay awake. I mean, how many times did Nancy tell this man, don't fall asleep, don't fall asleep? I mean, the guy could have drank coffee. He could have drank energy drinks. I mean, did they have energy drinks back then? I don't know. I mean, the guy could have done anything to stay awake, right? What did he do? He fell asleep, right? And that's why he got sucked up into the hole, and next you know, he's a puddle of blood. I mean, the guy kind of had it coming for falling asleep. So that's one thing I wanted to talk about. The other thing I wanted to talk about, I don't know, I haven't seen this in more recent films, but why was it a thing back in old films? When they ran away from the killer, it was always so like, oh my gosh, stop. And then they would always turn back to see where, if it was me, if Freddy Krueger or Jason was chasing me, I'm not looking back, and I'm gunning. I'm running until I'm physically hurting. I am not going to stop running until I can no longer run. I mean, I'm telling you, the way they run in these films is ridiculous. I'd be Sonic the Hedgehog, jumping over fences, jumping through windows, doing everything to get away from this person, from this monster, or whatever it is. I'll be doing backflips, gymnastics, and I can't even do a backflip, but I'll end up doing a backflip if I was getting chased by by Jason or Freddy. But that is it. Those were all the points I wanted to make of each of the films. Now, of course, you kind of already know who I'm going to choose as winning this round. Of course, is Nightmare on Elm Street, the 1984 film. I felt like this movie was, I would even say, far better than the 1980 Friday the 13th, right? Nightmare on Elm Street over Friday the 13th. Freddy wins this round. Again, I had a blast watching these films, and I'm excited for our horror marathon. The next video, I'm going to be reviewing a book, or should I say a manga I just read. We got Uzumaki, the manga that I've almost finished reading. But we are continuing this horror marathon. If you guys don't know, it's going to be through October and September, because October is not enough for horror. You need 2 months, maybe even 3. I might add December at the end, but who knows. But that is it. Thank you guys so much for watching. And let me know in the comments below if you guys agree with my pick.